Welcome everyone to District Grants Training for District 5110. I am so glad that you are here to learn all about district grants. You know, I am, if you didn't know, your incoming and just labeled the Young District Rotary Foundation Committee Chair. And I'm really excited to take on this role because the Rotary Foundation is my passion. In the last couple of weeks, months, we have been watching Rotary clubs and districts around the world support humanitarian service for Ukraine. What a miracle. How powerful we are, the Rotary Foundation and Rotary clubs from around the world. You know, the service that we do, our dedication to the 7 areas of focus, and our impeccable money management strategies are why I and so many other Rotarians donate generously to the Rotary Foundation. We are 4-star Navigator, Charity Navigator rated for 16 years in a row. And we are the 5th best foundation, charitable foundation in the world. And so this is why we're having this training today, so we can maintain those ratings in our district and clubs, and of course at Rotary at RI. Our purpose today is to increase your understanding. Next slide, please. Our purpose today is to increase your understanding as a district grant author for your club and how to use the DAC-DB grant module. We have an expert here today to help us with that. It also qualifies you to be the author of a complete district grant proposal application in 2022. And your attendance completes one of the components of our annual certificate qualification for your club to apply for these precious dollars, district dedicated funds. Our contributors today are experts in the field of writing, submitting district grants. Next slide, please. Our grants chair, Leanne Mobley, I would like to thank, first of all, for organizing this training, setting the date, getting the registration up, pulling together all of us as contributors, and putting together our slide presentation. Thank you so much, Leanne. I'm here as your incoming DRFCC. Lynn Kelly, who harkens from the East Coast in North Carolina, will be going through the DAC-DB grants module for us today. Past District Governor Hal Kibbe, our stewardship chair, will talk to you about qualifying your club and individuals to write grants. And lastly, our grants chair, district grants chair, Kathy Poole, will lead you how to fill out an application and complete final reports for your district grants. Thank you so much, our contributors. I'd like to show you our agenda for the day, our roadmap. I'm going to talk a little bit about the key changes we've made in this past year for district grants in 22-23. Lynn Kelly is going to walk us through the DAC-DB module. Hal's going to take us through stewardship requirements for you and your clubs. Kathy's going to help us write and complete reports for our district grants. And finally, we'll do a wrap up with questions. So let's talk about some of the key changes that we've made this year. And I think you'll find these to be good news. We have increased the district dedicated fund ratio for district grants from 1-to-1 to 1 to 1.5. So what that means is if your club puts up $2,000 worth of club funds for a grant, you can receive up to $3,000 in district dedicated funds for a total grant of $5,000. We've proposed this year in response to some of the comments we've received from clubs. And we also want to increase the impact of what we do on the ground in our communities and around the world by giving a larger match to your club funds. Some deadlines have changed. One has not. On June 1st of this year, your grants for next year must be submitted and complete on June 1. That hasn't changed. But final approval for DDF funding for your grants has been moved up to September 1. All revisions at that time need to be submitted in order for you to receive your funding. And then final reports in 2023 will be due on December 1st instead of December 31st to give our grant chairs ample time to go over your final reports and not have it foul up their Christmas or New Year's Eve celebrations. Another thing we've done to make things easier for everybody is to collapse the MOU and the financial management plan into one document. Please note that the 2022-23 club president and the president-elect for 23-24 need to sign this MOU. And it needs to also be initialed by your club treasurer. More details on that to come. Wanted to add one more thing though that we've changed that I think is a real benefit to clubs that are pursuing global grants. You can apply without a cap for travel to go to a international country to do a community assessment. The cap used to be $500, but now you can apply for a district grant without a cap at $500 for that travel. We think that'll really be a benefit to clubs pursuing global grants that need to complete a community assessment prior to application for the global grant. Next slide. We have three types of grant training that we offer in District 5110. And two of them, Introduction to Grants for President-elects, as well as this training for district grants, qualifies a club for a district grant. There's also Grant Management Seminar, which is on the RI website for global grant training. Today, we are just doing the training for district grants. So today, we are lucky to have Lynn Kelly with us. Lynn is from North Carolina, and we're so glad that she's taking time to lead us through the DAC-DB module for district grants. Lynn has been a dedicated member of DAC-DB team for 6 years. She was involved in the creation of the grants module that we will be discussing today. Lynn and her team are always available to set up one-on-one trainings when necessary for clubs. And please make a note of that. Lynn is a Rotarian, of course. She's a Paul Harris Society member and a major donor. She is also the district executive secretary of District 7730 and is a member of the South Brunswick Islands Rotary Club. And she and her husband, Jim, reside in Ocean Isle Beach, North Carolina. Please welcome Lynn Kelly.
Today, I am actually impersonating one of your clubs and one of your president-elects, and so that you can actually follow along with filling out the grant application and a final report. When you first log into DAC-DB, of course, you land on this homepage, and it could be look different according to how you have set this up. I am going to go to the My Club tab, and I'm going to locate the grants icon. And the first thing I'm going to do is change the year, because this is an older year here. I'm going to change the year to 22-23. As you can see, there is a grants overview on this page that is prepared for you and gives you all the deadlines. There's lots of live links here that you can click on and pull down the information. This was created by your district grants team. So take a moment when you get to the new year to review all of this information. I am going to go to the left side and click on Club Grants View. Now, since I created this grant earlier so that we can show how to do a final report later, I want to mention when you first come in here to create your grant and you click on this gold button, if you receive a message that says there are no signatures, be sure that one of your officers come over to the admin tab and click on club signatures and make sure you move the folks in your club that are able to sign the grant over to the right-hand side and click on save. Without having a signature, at least one signature, you will not be able to start the grant process. So I am going to click on New Club Grant Request. And I am going to just put some information in here. Of course, this is all fictitious information. And we'll just pick some dates out here. Okay, if there is more than one club involved that you're working with, you'll click the clubs involved and you will simply move over those clubs to the right side. The club creating the grant is the lead club, so keep that in mind. Then you can go to the Contacts tab. If there are more than one individual working on the grant, feel free to move those individuals over. And now let's go to the application itself. I'm just going to put a start date in here. Proposed end date. And this could be whatever you know, your club's information is. If it doesn't go to the treasurer, be sure to put that info in there. And then there'll be a few blocks of information that you need to complete here. And be as clear and concise as you can, so it makes it easy for the district grants team to review your grant. Just copying and pasting this text because it's a lot easier than me typing this in front of you. Anything with an asterisk has to have information in it. And be sure you read everything that's highlighted in red that your district grants team has entered there. Make sure you check the boxes at the bottom. And now we're going to go back up to the top of the grant. And notice there's 4 tabs here. I'm going to save the grant. And now you will notice there is a status bar here. So you'll always know where you are in the grant process. And there are 2 additional tabs here. Now I'm going to put in a estimated budget. And we're going to add our information. Here's my DDF request. And make sure you check the little radio button. And now I'm going to add the club funds contribution. So the total amount is $12.50. And I am going to add my estimated expenses. And you might have several line items here. I'm just going to put one line item in to make it simple. And down here, I can see that I have a 0, so everything is in balance. And now when I go up to the top, you can save it. And then you'll see a button that says Collect Grant Signatures. You're going to click that button on. A box will come up notifying you that you are in the process of collecting signatures and signing the grant and submitting it for approval. So I'm going to say OK. When I do that, another button pops up and asks us to sign the grant. You can see here's the empty box. So far, no one has signed anything, so I'm going to sign it. And now it's asking me, is my budget complete? Is my application complete? If you say, oh, wow, I forgot to put the budget in, you can say no, continue to add grant details, but I know my budget's complete, my application's complete. Now I am going to submit the grant to the district for approval. And you can see on the status bar where I'm at, submitted grant for district approval. If I go back to my club grants, now you'll see I have that one that was approved earlier. And you can see that I have one that is sitting here for district review and approval. So you're always going to know where you stand with your grant. Now I'm going to simply run through the final report. Your project is completed, and now you're ready to complete your final report. So I'm going to go to my approved project and click the pencil. And the first thing I'm going to do is add my expenses. So you're going to click on Add Receipt. And I'm not exactly sure what your receipt number is, but what your receipt vendor would be, but you just put that in here. I'm going to put this one was for 500. And as soon as you save this for the first time, you will be able to click the pencil, come back in, and load up a copy of the receipt. So let me find my little test file here. And so here's my first receipt. And I'm going to save it. Oops. Let me just do that again. There we go. Add. I don't think I saved that the first time. There we go. That's your first one. And it automatically gives another line item here because this is a receipt. You could actually put your check number in for all these receipts if you wanted to. I'm going to make all of them. Let's see. I'm going to make this one 550. Okay, and I'm going to add another copy. Okay, and then I am going to add my third one. Oops, I think I have too much money in here. I'm sorry, I'm in the payments section. Okay, I have my 3 receipts there. Now I'm going to add my payment. And I actually only used 1 check to pay for all of this because one individual purchased everything. Now, this is going to be important for you to indicate the receipts that this check covers. It makes it easy for your grants team to match receipts to the check or credit card statement that you used. Many times you have multiple receipts, and without doing this, it could be a nightmare for your district grants team to figure out what receipt matches what check. So when you're putting your check number in, there's this little button that says receipt numbers. You just put your cursor in there, click your mouse, and select all the receipts that apply. And you could put some comments in here if you'd like. And so now when your district grants team comes in, they can easily see, here are your expenses, and here's your check, and here are all the receipts that correspond to this particular check. So that makes it very easy for them to make sure they have everything they need to approve your grant. So once you've done that, you're going to go to your...
Excuse me, Lynn, may I just add one more comment? This is Kathy Poole.
Mm-hmm.
And that is to all of you who are watching Lynn upload her receipt information and her payment information. One thing I'd like to add and just reiterate that Lynn did, and that is when you list your receipts, as she did, she typed in STARS receipt number 1, $500, and listed the information. It's really important to go back, click on the pencil, and upload your receipts right here, right to this, on this expense page. We always have quite a few people who just go and load their receipts in the documents section, which makes it harder for us when we're reviewing to match up the receipts. And it's a lot easier for your readers and your district grants review team if you'll upload your receipts right here by clicking that pencil to upload. Thanks, Lynn.
Thanks, Kathy. And Kathy is correct, because when you upload them here, it's actually going to go right into the documents. And I will show you where that is after we complete our final report. Well, I'll show you right now. So if you click Documents, and now you click Expenses, here are all the items that we have loaded. There's some that I loaded and deleted, so that's why you see more, but they're right here, and this corresponds to the item number that was in there. So just feel free to do that here, so Kathy doesn't have to come back to you and say, gosh, I don't know what those receipts match up to. This way, they will match to your check or your credit card receipt. So then you're going to go to the final report. And there's going to be some information that is pre-populated from the application, and you don't have to do anything there. You just have to fill out the additional boxes. And mostly they're numbers. And then you can put in text here. Just answer the questions. And you don't have to do anything down here. All this is going to be automatically populated. You're going to save your final report. It's going to tell you that you're saving it and that a copy of it will be available under the documents.
Cool.
Okay, hopefully that's saved. And now if I go back, make sure it's saved. Yep. Now, when we come back, we have another button to collect final signatures. So I'm going to click that button. It's going to tell me to confirm that we're filling out the final report and all the documents, images, proof of purchase are uploaded. I'm going to say, okay. I am going to sign the final report, and you can see the previous signatures from when we first submitted the application. And now we're in the approval process. So I've got to submit my final report. And it's again asking me if everything is complete. I am going to say yes. And now if I go back, you can see I've submitted the final report for district approval. So pay attention to the status bar. It helps you to keep track of things. And then if you go to the Club Grants view, you can also see what status it's under. And that is it for now.
Great, Lynn, thank you. And
You're
actually
welcome.
to you, I mean, sort of procedurally using that DACDB grants module has been great instruction. We really appreciate that. And monitoring the question box, I've noticed that there's quite a few things procedurally that people are asking, some of which Kathy and Hal will be going over in their parts of this presentation. But I do think a couple of them, since we just saw your presentation, might be appropriate to kind of remind people of what the expectations are as far as the grant reviewer. So I'll put this to you, but more importantly to Kathy as well. And Kathy, the question really was, what if we have a whole folder where we've already captured all of our receipts? Can we just upload that folder on one line in the spreadsheet and that satisfies the requirement?
So thanks, Leanne, and thanks to the person who asked that question. A couple things about that. Our team would ask you to number all of your receipts. And I think my question back to you would be, how many receipts are we talking about? If there are, let's say 50 receipts, which happens, I would say that's too many in one file, because our group has to sort through all of these. So I would actually ask you to rescan them in smaller groups so that we're not digging through the proverbial shoebox full of receipts in the digital form. So perhaps, in fact, yeah, you could honestly, you can download an Adobe app to your phone or other kinds of apps and rescan receipts. So again, the question really is, how many receipts are we talking about? If it's only 3 to 5, I'd say we can figure that out. If it's more than that, we'd rather have you break them down, if that helps.
Great, Kathy, thank you. Other question from Paula Hancock is, please go over if receipts total more than the total value of the project, how do you want them to deal with that? Kathy, you need to unmute, babe. I could see you talking with your hands, but I wasn't hearing you.
Thank you, Leanne. Sorry about that. Lynn may want to, or in fact, I would ask Lynn to comment on that. I think whether we're talking about the budget tab or the expense tab, what happens is you list your revenue, which is club cash and district matching funds, and then you list your expenses. And the question is, if you, let's say you have a $5,000 total grant, but you have $7,000 in receipts, I think that might be the question. Mm-hmm. We would actually ask you to limit your uploading of receipts to match the cash available. So you might have a very big project. Your project might be $7,000, but for the grant purposes, if you're only working with 5,000, then we would really ask you to kind of stick to the 5,000 in receipts. Now, if it's off by $100 or whatever, your receipts don't match perfectly, that we can work with. Does that answer the question?
I think so. What I was interpreting is maybe not, a $2,000 swing in the over what our new grant project size is of $5,000. But, if I had $5,500 in receipts, but I needed part of one of those receipts to get me to the 5,000, then yes, it's going to get uploaded. However, on the spreadsheet, your income and your expenses are going to balance out. And the reviewer would just notice that, oh, well, I've got more than what I need, but I have what I need. And that's the important part.
And you can always note that in the comment box when you're loading it, that this receipt is more than what, it should be, but this is the amount we're applying to this grant.
Yeah, good point. Really good point. Another question for both of you. If you're applying for a grant for scholarships, you're not going to have the receipts at the time of the application. So therefore, no receipts to put in, right? And Kathy, I think we'll just have you address that in your section about what's going to accompany the application versus what Lynn went over, what some of the required documents are for the final report.
Okay.
And one of our reviewers, Tim Quinlan, was just making a comment. The final report boxes, so Lynn went over, it pre-populates what your project was, but you also need to include in those text boxes the answers to the questions in red, which help you complete the final report for the reviewer. I have a question about interim reports. Kathy, I'm going to push that to you because that's more district policy.
Okay. So we in District 5110 do not require you to file an interim report. So we do get this question sometimes because on the status bar up on top, which is actually wonderful, and thanks to Lynn and the DACDB crew for adding that, it helps you keep track of where you are in the process of your grant. Since we do not require an interim report, you can go directly to the final report tab. So the interim report tab is there and it's on the timeline. You can just skip right over it and start working on your final report. So there's
And
nothing.
Kathy, we can hide that for you. So
Oh, great.
yes, so it won't show it in the setup.
Wonderful. Thank you, Lynn.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, another procedural question. If the grant project itself, the funds are actually being expended to pay for instructors, training instructors, can they submit that receipt since all I'm going to make this up, all 5 instructors are receiving the same amount? It would be to one payee, total amount for 5 instructors. That would be okay to be one receipt, Kathy?
Leanne, I just want to be sure. So these are people providing instruction for the project.
It says grant to pay for training instructors.
Okay.
Obviously, we're hypothetical because we haven't,
Sure.
nothing's out
Sure.
there yet. But I think the question for the group is, do we need to submit a receipt per instructor? So you're paying the same quantity for the same amount of people to the same payee. Can that just be consolidated on one receipt from that, whoever the payee is, or
Sure.
do we need to ask the payee to provide 5 separate but identical receipts?
Okay, so I'm going to add to the hypothetical just to make sure I've got it right. If, let's say, the receipt comes from Eugene 4J School District, and it lists the names of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 instructors for a total amount, that one receipt would be fine from the entity that paid the instructors. If that, I think I'm maybe understanding it. If the instructors were paid, Joe Smith and Sue Johnson and whatever else, then you'd need a receipt for each one. But probably it sounds like your cooperating partner is one entity that's paying them, then one receipt should be fine, if I understand correctly.
Yeah, and I agree. And I think maybe we'll take the opportunity right now is there are some very unique, you guys are doing great projects, so you have some very unique circumstances that it would be impossible for us when we put the policies and procedures thoughtfully together in our manual that are guiding us on how we steward the district designated funds to come up with all these different scenarios that we're obviously getting presented to us here today. So I think the bottom line is when it's something that you want to make sure of is going to take the least amount of time on your part and the least amount of time on the grant reviewer's part is to just check with them and find out exactly how to proceed from there. Lynn talked about interim reports, Kathy, and the question is, so there's really no need for an interim report. So do you want to address that now, or do you want to address it in your section? I wasn't sure when you were going to cover that.
The question about interim reports?
About us using interim reports, right?
Whatever is most convenient. I mean, I would say really I'll go ahead and say just a couple words about it now so that I think we can move on fairly quickly. There have been times when a club indicates that they can't make a deadline to finalize the final report deadline, and then they were perhaps given an extension. In that case, in the past, we would ask them to file an interim report. Now we're really not having that happen. A lot of it happened during COVID. When folks they just couldn't meet the original planned timeline. So, I would say in general, for 99% of what we're doing, we're not going to need an interim report at all. So the fact that Lynn and the DAC-DB crew can hide that, I think that sounds like the way to go. And you'll just go directly to final report.
Right, and I would agree, and I'll just add to that to strengthen your comments, that district grants are really intended to be short-term projects. You get them done, they're done in a year. And the way, if you actually look at what you'll see later, the timeline on June 1, submitting the grant, getting the funding together, executing the project, and completing the final report, the district has provided you with a 16-month window to do that. So again, I would agree with Kathy, there really isn't any reason that you would need additional time, therefore the interim report tab to do that. And so that'll be a one-on-one kind of conversation again. Does that make sense?
Hal's been a Rotarian since 1985. He's been the stewardship chair for the last 2 years. He's been on so many World Community Service grant trips, either as a project leader or a volunteer. He says the most fun job as Rotary chair in his career has been the chair, when he was the chair of Youth Exchange, being on that committee for 7 years. We're so lucky to have Hal in our district. Hal, thank you so much. And here we go. Hal Kibbe, stewardship chair.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning, Hal. On behalf
Good
of
morning.
everybody.
Good morning, everybody. First of all, the Rotary Foundation requires clubs to be qualified every year, so the qualification does not carry over from year to year. Last fall, District Rotary Foundation Committee Chair Tim Mobley asked for comments from everybody about not only our global grant process, but also what we could do to make things easier for district grants. Tim and the grants chair, Leanne, with help from Cindy, spent a tremendous amount of time going through the district policy manual to try to make things easier. The district executive committee has met on several occasions to revise our policies, and the purpose of all of this was to make things as easy as possible for clubs to qualify for grants, while at the same time maintaining good stewardship of foundation funds, and to keep our district qualified to be able to receive Rotary Foundation grants. I know some of what I have to say is going to repeat what Cindy said and what Kathy will say, but they are mostly things where I think in the past we have not done a good enough job communicating to the clubs, and there have been a lot of misunderstandings. So in order to qualify for a district grant, first of all, the club has to be in good standing, which means that all of your district and RI dues have been paid. The president, their 22-23 club president, needs to attend the introduction to grants for training for PEs on April 29th that Cindy is going to present, or complete the recertification course online at the RI Learning Center. I would say it's going to be significantly easier for the club president, the 22-23 club president, to go to the meeting next week on April 29th with Cindy than trying to do the online course. For district grants, the club has to be current on district grant reports, and that's a change from this year. This year, we said that the club had to be current on not only district grant reports, but also global grant reports. The club does have to be current on global grant reports to qualify for global grants. Tim and Leanne have done an absolutely outstanding job of revising the club memorandum of understanding, and it now includes the important points from the financial management plan. We're asking that this year, the club treasurer initial that memorandum of understanding. And the reason for that is that in the past, we've had several club treasurers say, well, I didn't know I was supposed to do that. So this year, we're having them initial the memorandum of understanding as well. The Rotary Foundation requires that both the 22-23 president and the president-elect, in other words, the president for 23-24, sign the club memorandum of understanding. We know that many clubs are not going to have their 23-24 club president. So what we've said instead is that if your club does not have a 23-24 club president, that your club secretary can sign, or if you don't have a club secretary for 22-23, your club treasurer can sign. Next slide, please. This year, this is the first one here. The author must attain for a district grant. The author must attend this training session or watch the video that'll be posted. This is not a new requirement, but it's one that we're going to pay more attention to this year because we've noticed a lot of problems in writing the grants if the author has not attended this session. The other change, and this is more for global grants than for district grants, is that the primary contact or the author, as we call them, must complete the GMS, the Grant Management Seminar, online at the RI Web Center, on the RI website, Learning Center. This is a change from this year. This year, we were saying that 2 members of the club must be qualified with the Grant Management Seminar. The alternative to doing this, if the person is is experienced with grant management and has gone through the whole grant management seminar in the last 2 or 3 years, you can obtain a waiver from the Young DRFCC and complete just the recertification on the RI website center instead of having to go through the whole big, long seminar. I'm not going to go through everything for qualifying in the MOU. I think that Tim and Leanne have done a superb job. As we've said before, the financial management plan is now incorporated into the MOU, so there's only going to be one document to sign. The document has an inventory requirement that is a TRF requirement, but what we're going to do is accept receipts that are uploaded to DACDB as that inventory, so you don't need to worry about keeping a separate inventory. There's a requirement on the MOU that is kind of an archaic requirement that comes from the Rotary Foundation, which says 2 signatures are required on the bank account. Don't worry about this so much. The purpose of this is for checks and balances. So as long as somebody from the club requests the check from the club treasurer and the club treasurer writes the check, that's all we care about, rather than having 2 signatures on the check. So we're trying. The next one, the separate bank account, is really important, and it's important that you don't commingle club funds into this account other than those that go to pay for the district grant. I would highly recommend that you title this the Rotary Club of ABC District Grants, and then you can use this one account from year to year to year. However, sometimes we see clubs put in here district grant account reading program for first graders. Well, that labels that account for just one project. And we'd really recommend that you make the title something that you can use from year to year. If you're doing a global grant, then each grant needs a separate bank account. But for district grants accounts, you can use one account for several grants. Documentation retention is really taken care of when you file your final report with all required documents. So you don't need to really worry about that too much. Although I would strongly suggest that you keep a separate copy in your own records. Excuse me. The club MOU, the cooperating organization MOU, I think is pretty straightforward with one exception. And one place that we've seen some problems in the past is when a conflict of interest occurs. Please note that the conflict of interest from the Rotary Foundation says that it can occur when somebody can either makes or influences a decision about a grant that benefits them. And so what we've seen in the past is a club officer being the primary contact on a grant, and that club officer is also either a member of the board or an employee of the cooperating organization and manages the grant from the cooperating organization side as well. So that's a clear conflict of interest. But if you're in doubt at all, please disclose it on the cooperating organization MOU and let us look at it, and we'll work with you to make sure that a conflict of interest does not really occur. There's some resources that we have available to you. In a minute, I'll show you where you can get all of them. The District Rotary Foundation Manual of Policies and Procedures that was recently revised is really our Bible. I would strongly suggest that you download that, and for district grants, become familiar with the district grant section of that manual. For global grants, there's a separate section to read. The cooperating organization MOU is available for download, as is the club memorandum of understanding. The last one, the grants checklist. The last one won't let me go to the next slide, Leanne. The grants checklist is a checklist that Leanne developed, and I think it's one of the best checklists that I've ever seen for doing district and global grants. I think she did an absolutely superb job of summarizing everything here. So again, please use this checklist, and what you can do is just go through it and make sure that you've done everything that you need to do. All of the resources are available in two places. They're available on the landing page for district grants in 22-23. To get there, you need to log on to DACDB. At the top of the page, click My Club, then click Grants, and then make sure that you change the org year to 22-23 if you're doing this right now, because DACDB is going to default to the 21-22 year. So be sure that you get changed to the 22-23 year before you start downloading documents, because if you download them from the 21-22 year, things have changed, such as the policy manual. So please make sure you're in the right place on the grants landing page. The other place to get them is on the Files tab in DACDB. At the top of the page, you can go to the district and you can check files, and then click on Foundation, click on Stewardship, click on 22-23, and then click on Documents. I know that sounds like it's pretty complicated, but to get there, it goes through really very quickly. And I personally find it easier to download the documents from the Files tab than I do from the landing page. And the reason for that is that from the landing page, it's going to download to your browser first, and then you have to download from your browser. Whereas on this one, if you get to the documents, there's a little box on the left-hand side that you can check. And then at the top of the page, there's a place to download the document, and downloads the document directly. Next one. Before Leanne, before we take questions, last thing I'd like to say is just thank you to all of you for all of it you do for Rotary. And if you have questions that we don't get answered today, please contact me or contact Kathy, and one of us will answer those questions for you. Thanks.
Thanks, Hal. So quickly going to the questions here. Hal, you referred to in club qualification and who needs to part of that club qualification being the president-elect's responsibility. So here's the question. On a multi-club grant, must each club's president-elect be qualified?
No, only the lead club needs to be qualified.
Great, thank you. We also talked about the revised club MOU that requires signatures on it and compliance with what's contained in the document. The question is, I believe, is where or how does the treasurer initial the MOU?
The treasurer initials the same MOU that the club president and club president-elect for next year signs. So there's one document that all three of you sign. So it's the same way as both presidents sign.
And I don't know if we're to the point yet where we can talk about it in much detail, but my understanding is that district expense, we will have the ability for DocuSign.
We will have yes, that's true. We'll have the ability for DocuSign. You can also sign it if you have a PD, if you have the full Acrobat, you can also sign it using Acrobat, the PDF file. You can also sign the PDF file that way. But yes, we will have DocuSign, and so we'll send it out the MOU to the people that need to sign it. If you don't have a hard copy that you can sign and scan.
Right. So a question, how many years do we need to keep documentation on past district grants? And I think this comes down to, the 5 versus 7. You want to comment on that, Hal?
Sure. The Rotary Foundation says that we must keep all of our documents for 5 years or whatever is required by local law. And so I interpret that to mean that the clubs need to keep the documents for 7 years because of the Internal Revenue Service, even though TRF says 5 years. We keep all of the documents that you're submitting with your final report for 7 years.
Thank you. And a couple of comments in a different way about that new document that's available is that checklist for clubs that covers both bullet points on district grants and bullet points on global grants. That is included, that Hal referenced, where you can get these documents, so you don't have to rely on the little teeny tiny writing on that handout that I made available to you today. Is on in DACDB on the district landing page. That checklist will be available, and remember, you have to change to the org year of 22-23 in order to see that. So again, all of the District Rotary Foundation manual, the club MOU, the cooperating organization MOU, the checklist, each of those documents that pertains to you writing in a successful project application for the 22-23 year is on that landing page and is downloadable. And if you have any trouble with that, you can give any of us a call, and we'll be happy to help you there. Let's see if we've got, my cursor froze, got some more questions.
Who signs the conflict of interest?
Tim is telling me that there was a question put in about the conflict of interest MOU. There isn't, I'm sorry, Hal, I'll answer this. There isn't an MOU for conflict of interest. Is that a couple of things on the cooperating organization MOU? If you have an organization that you're working with that is an integral part of you executing your grant project, there is a section in there that addresses, you need to include the names of any Rotarians who are senior management, who are on their board in there. So that will help you declare anything there. You can also just write a letter that would be uploaded with your grant application. As far as signing it, club representative signs it, the grant author, and also the appropriate person at the cooperating organization signs that. Can the president or president-elect be the grant author and then sign off on the grant as club PO? So they have a dual function. The PE, or next year's club president, is writing the grant and signing the grant.
That's okay. It's where the conflict of interest really arises is when the grant goes to a cooperating organization and one of the club officers is also a senior person at the cooperating organization and is managing the grant from both sides. So I would really, the club president can certainly write the grant, and the club president has to submit the grant. So yes, the club president can do both of those functions.
Okay, so they can wear two hats there. Okay, last question. Actually, Bruce is asking something about this year's 21-22 grant. How do we find out the date that our 21-22 district grant was approved? I'm not sure why he's wanting the date of approval, but
there's in the when you're in editing, there's a little box to click on. I don't remember what it was called. Just a minute, I can find it real quick. There's a little box up there that says activity log. And if you click on the activity log, that'll show when everything was done on that particular grant. It'll show when it was originally submitted, when it was originally approved, changes, et cetera. So you can click on that activity log and that'll tell you when the grant was approved.
great, Hal, thanks. And Trudy, your other question came up, but I believe Kathy's going to address that. And one last question for Hal. Okay, Julie, I'll have Cindy address that at the end. Thank you. Okay, Hal, thank you very much. And thank you, Cindy.
Thank you, Leanne, and thank you so much, Hal. That was really informative. It is now my pleasure to introduce District Grants Chair Kathy Poole. Her Rotary experience started in 1989 as a Rotary Ambassadorial Scholar to the University of South Pacific in Suva, Fiji. And she was sponsored by her hometown Rotary Club in Ontario, Oregon. Kathy joined Rotary then in 2001, the Eugene Metropolitan Rotary Club, and has served as club president twice. She was a member or chair of the District Rotary Foundation Ambassadorial Scholarship Committee, and then became the Global Grants Chair in the past. She is now a host Rotarian for Global Grants Scholar Sayaka Akiyama at the University of Oregon, who is studying landscape architecture. She's just a joy to work with. Kathy has also served as a District Grants Chair since June of 2020, and we're just so lucky to have her. She has worked on her own club's global grants in Kenya. She's collaborated on district grants, and she is inspired by Rotarians the world over. Please welcome Kathy Poole, our District Grants Chair.
There we go. There we go. Okay. So this is going to be, a lot of this is a review of what you heard from Lynn with DAC-DB, with really the specifics of our District 5110 timeline and requirements. So these are important dates and we want to be sure you get them. So we'll sort of walk our way through them again. So June 1, actually this, sorry about that. June 1, that should say June 1, 2022. So right off the bat, there is an error there. But the deadline for this year, the coming year's district grants, 22-23, June 1 is the application deadline. And you all just listened to Hal's presentation of what it takes for a club to be qualified. And so once your club is qualified, we'll actually be working our way through all of the applications that come in. June 1 is the deadline to submit it, and that is to have your president-elect sign it and submit your application. Then as we review the grant proposals for 22-23, there are frequently some often small things missing. So we will be in touch with you during the summer months to make sure that we have all the details included in your proposal so that we're ready to approve it when that time comes. The most important documents that you'll need to upload are, if you're working with a cooperating organization, you'll need to upload that signed cooperating organization MOU, Memorandum of Understanding. And you'll need to upload your district grant bank account verification, which we're asking you now to upload a current bank statement from your district grants bank account. In the past, we've asked you to upload a voided check, but the advantage of us receiving your statement is that we can see at the beginning of this new grant year, what's in your account, and then we can work forward as the grant is approved and your funds are accrued for the new grants. One other key point, before your grant can be funded, your final report or reports from last year's 21-22, or I should say the current year's district grants, must be complete. So we will go through and we will approve grants if everything is ready to go between June and September. We won't actually fund any new grants for 22-23 until your final reports for 21-22 are in. So we can talk about that if you have questions about how that works. Again, September 1 is the deadline for you to have all of your details up to date, ready to go, and ready to approve, September 1. And then a year later, a year plus later, December 1, 2023, your project must be complete and your final report submitted. As I think we've talked about a little bit earlier, Cindy mentioned it in her early slides. In the past and in the current year, that deadline has been December 31st. And we moved that up to December 1st so that we can get everything taken care of before the holidays are upon us. Okay. Okay, so to review a few of the things that Lynn went through in her demonstration of how DAC-DB works, I'm just going to go through, and you'll have these, you'll have this handout with these slides available to you after this as you're working through your reports or your proposals. But I just want to add that the 22-23 district grants landing page. So when you log in to DAC-DB, you go to the grants module, the first page listed on the left-hand menu bar is the district grants landing page. All of the required documents that Hal has gone through, actually the video of this training program, all of those documents will be available to you right there on the district grants landing page. Very handy, easy place to download the documents from if you need to refer or you need the cooperating organization MOU or any of those other details. So the district grants landing page 22-23 will be a key reference section for you. I want to make a distinction between, there's two places where you describe your project. The first one is on the details tab called the project description. And the second one is on the application tab called the project definition. And the difference between those two, the first one, we just want a very brief, short 2 or 3 sentence description of the project, because our district Rotary Foundation chair, Cindy, will need short descriptions of every proposal to submit to the Rotary Foundation for their approval. So that's why there's 2 places for you to describe your project. Details tab, very concise. Application tab, project definition. That's where you can tell us a lot more, give us all the details of your project. We just wanted to also say that district grants require Rotarian involvement. They're not intended to be pass-through grants, meaning the idea is not just to give money to a local organization to do their project, but to actually involve your club Rotarians in a project. So we want you to tell us in that application project how Rotarians will be involved. They may be involved in developing the project, in working through the publicity for the project as it's underway, presenting programs, financial management. There are all kinds of ways that Rotarians can be involved. And we would like to have you tell us what your plans are for that. Next slide, please. Thank you. Okay, receipts and gift cards. So we've talked a little bit about receipts, and I want to talk about what constitutes a valid receipt, and kind of highlight again the importance of good record keeping and keeping a great track record of how you spent your grant money, because we're all accountable. We're accountable to our clubs, to our district, and to the Rotary Foundation. And so valid receipts include cash register receipts. If you're buying supplies from Ace Hardware or some other vendor, cash register receipts will work. If you're buying something large, like a refrigerator and a freezer for an organization, you can get a receipt from them, an invoice. We like to have you give us a zero balance invoice, which just means it shows that the payment was made. So you may be buying a freezer for, I don't know, $2,000 or something. And that is absolutely an acceptable receipt. I just want to add, if you are doing a project in another country, if you're sending us foreign receipts from another country, and particularly if the receipt is written in another language, we're going to need you to translate that for us. And that needs to come and be loaded along with your foreign language receipt. So let's say you're doing a project in Mexico and your receipt is in Spanish for whatever the line items are that you're purchasing. We need a side-by-side translation of what that says. And we're also going to need to know what the exchange rate is. So if your receipt is shown in Mexican pesos, then we want you to, along with your English translation of the receipt, give us the dollar value and the exchange rate of that purchase. If you are working with a cooperating organization, sort of like we were referring to earlier in the program when somebody asked about paying faculty to teach a special seminar. If you're, let's say you're working with the school district and they are purchasing books or paying a faculty member to carry out the work of your project, the cooperating organization needs to provide those receipts, right, for you to upload in your report. I hope that makes sense. If you're paying, $2,000, let's say, to the 4J school district in Eugene, Oregon, and that is to pay these 4 faculty members to teach courses, we need the 4J school district to give you a receipt outlining what that payment entailed. And then you would upload that receipt. Finally, all receipts need to be dated after your grant is approved. So there's sort of a 2-stage approval process. After the June 1 deadline, and we have, let's say we're going to have 55 proposals. Our District Rotary Foundation Chair, Cindy, incoming, will need to in turn submit that to the Rotary Foundation and get their approval for our 55 proposals. And then we in turn need to review and approve each individual one. So once your proposal is approved, and you'll see that in DACDB, we'll sign off on it and approve it, then you can start spending money for your grant. But you can't, for example, spend money now in April 2022 when your grant is not approved until, let's say, July 1 of 2022. So I hope that makes sense. Please do wait to spend money on your grant project until after your grant is approved. Okay. Gift cards, that always comes up. Sorry, Leanne. Yeah. Gift cards are not allowed, and the reason for that is that it's very, very difficult, if not impossible, to track what is actually purchased with a gift card. There are, in rare circumstances, cases where a club may request an exemption to this policy. And so that discounts what I just said. I mean, the bottom line is really we shouldn't be using gift cards. However, there are cases when it's very difficult for a club to carry out a project without a gift card. And so so you have to request approval for using gift cards, and they can only be used when the purchase is very much specified. For example, you giving a gift card to a grocery store, which sells beer and wine and cigarettes and things like that, would not be acceptable. But there may be cases where a more targeted gift card for a targeted vendor could work, but you have to get approval to do that. Sorry for that long-winded description. Please talk to us if you are thinking you want to use gift cards, because we'll need to approve those on a case-by-case basis. Thanks for that. Okay, when you are finalizing the budget tab, as Lynn Kelly worked her way through DAC-DB, be sure that you, on the budget tab, that you list the income side. So that would be club cash and your requested district match. And then on the expenses side, you would list that an equal amount so that your income and your expenses should show a zero balance, right? If your income side shows $5,000, then we expect that we'll see on the expense side your expected expenses to also equal 5,000. We highlighted the expenses tab. That's the tab that you use for your final report. When Lynn was in that tab in DAC-DB, I would just like to encourage you to do a couple of things. One is start uploading your project receipts as you receive them, along with your payments. It's a lot easier to do that when it's fresh in your mind, and you can keep track of both the receipt and the payment to cover the cost of that. No need to wait till your final report. And secondly, on that expenses tab, the itemization is really, really important for the reviewers. So we talked about if you are using one check to pay for 3 or 4 receipts, we want you to be sure and upload those receipts together and add comments so that it's possible for the district review team to make the connection between your payment and your receipts. So if you have questions about that, please reach out to us, and we will definitely talk to you and help you work through the use of that expense tab when you're writing your final report. And finally, in the documents tab, that section at the beginning during the proposal writing process, you will be uploading your district grants bank account statement to show us the account and kind of the status of that account. And then if you are working with a cooperating organization, you will also upload your cooperating organization memorandum of understanding. Not every club is going to need that. Some of you are doing all the work directly. That's totally fine. But if you are working with a cooperating organization, we'll need that in there as well in the documents tab. Also, when you're at the final report stage or your project is unfolding, you've taken a bunch of wonderful photographs, you can upload those as you go into the documents tab. You can upload articles and publicity and any other project documents that will help us keep track of what you've been doing and help you demonstrate your project. Okay, thanks, Leanne. this is really important. The first one on there, hit the save button regularly. You know, we've all had it happen where we've entered data and then either we got distracted or we needed to leave and we forgot to hit the save button. And then you go back and all the information that you have entered into your proposal is no longer there. I really encourage you, every time you fill out one tab in DACDB, hit the save button before you move to the next tab. That way you'll be sure and not have to re-enter data that you recall entering in the past. So hit the save button very often, and that will save you a lot of trouble wondering what happened to the data that you entered. A reminder that your proposal, your district grant proposal, when you're at the point of collecting club signatures, must be signed by the president-elect, the incoming president, who will be president during the year in which the project will take place. Just a reminder that Cindy went over this at the very beginning. The District Rotary Foundation Committee made the decision to increase the match, the DDF match, to from 1 to 1 to 1.5 to 1. So the maximum match, if your club puts up $2,000, the maximum DDF match then would be $3,000, and your project could be up to a $5,000 value project. And of course, if your club only puts up you know, a smaller amount, you will get a 1.5 to 1 match. Multi-club proposals must be listed as high priority project for all participating clubs. So that's important because as we're reviewing, if we do not have enough district designated funds to cover second priority proposals, then really in a multi-club proposal, everybody has to agree that the multi-club proposal is their top priority, their high priority. Also, only the lead club must be qualified. This came up before in Hal's section. Only the lead club must be qualified, but each club president-elect must actually sign the proposal. And again, if you have a problem with that, give us a holler and we'll walk you through, or we'll walk the presidents through and help make sure everybody can sign that. Again, if your club is submitting 2 proposals, one has to be high priority, the other one has to be medium priority, so that if depending on funding, we need to know which is your top priority. And then the question, will both of my club's proposals be funded if we submit 2? That depends on the number of proposals that we receive and the total dollar value of district designated funds that we have available. And that figure will be available soon. We don't know the exact bottom line quite yet. Next slide. Just a reminder about your dedicated district grants bank account. Hal talked about this a little bit, and we've been working with all of you for the last couple of years, making sure that everybody has a district grants bank account, and most of you do. If you happen not to, if you're perhaps submitting a proposal this time and haven't done so for the last couple of years, be sure to start now setting up your district grants bank account. And when you do complete, or you're working on your proposal, we'll want to see the bank statement from that bank account. And we also ask you to make all of your payments for your district grant projects. Those payments should come out of your district grants bank account rather than your operating account or some other club bank account. That just makes accounting much, much easier for all of us to keep track of. And finally, again, it's important not to commingle club operating funds and your district grant funds. Okay. Okay, when can we start spending for 22-23 grants? You'll need to wait until your grant is approved. And as I mentioned earlier, that's kind of a 2-step process. After June 1, Cindy will be requesting approval for all of our grants from the Rotary Foundation. And the second step is individual club approvals. And so please don't start spending any grant funds until you your grant shows up as approved in DAC-DB. And finally, what should we do? What if we're unable to carry out the proposed project once it's been approved? Sometimes this happens, and it's happened a little bit more during the pandemic, but the district Rotary Foundation Committee reviewed this this spring, and the agreement was that if you're not able to carry out a proposal after you have completed or after you've submitted it and it's been approved, if you have not made any payments yet for that on that original project, it is possible to change it if you let us know prior to December 31st of this year. So you would need to request approval. That request should come to the district grants team, and that would ultimately need to be approved by Cindy O'Neill, who's our district Rotary Foundation chair for 22-23. Okay. I know this is a ton of information. I think I'll sort of leave that for you all to look over, but just kind of a summary of what we did in 21-22, the number of grants funded, the total dollar value, and say that we are estimating for 22-23 approximately 130,000 in district designated funds available for district grants. As you can see, this past year, we allocated 137,650. And so we have a little bit less, we think. It's not a final figure yet, but a little bit less we anticipate coming in this year than we had last year. And of course, that relates to the amount that we have given to the Rotary Foundation 3 years prior. So our ability, the district's ability to match your grant funds depends on the total number of proposals and the total funding available. And I think I'll leave it to Leanne or Hal or Cindy to let us know when that final figure is actually going to be available.
Wonderful, Kathy. Thank you. And you're right. There's been so much information presented here today. I've got a ton of questions for you in the chat box. I think out of essence of time here, because we're at our 90-minute mark, I'm going to make some summary statements here because some of them you did cover in your great presentation. So what we, as a reminder, what we heard Kathy say was your club can submit up to 2 grant applications for the 22-23 application year. One of them must be labeled as your high priority and one of them must be labeled as a medium priority. If you're participating in a multi-club grant, then that's going to automatically take the position of your highest priority grant. If you're interested in, if there's not enough money available, there is a well spelled out policy in our manual about how we then select the successful project applications that'll be funded this year, but that's all written in the manual. Again, Kathy went over that unique district grant account that you put your grant funding into and you spend all of your grant funding from that account. Will include your club cash portion as well as the district portion that was sent to you. And then you pay everything out of that account. It's not going to be commingled in your operating funds for your club. Let's see, looking at the questions quickly, there's been some receipt questions, but I think again, being very specific, contact your grant reviewer to go over that. Did want to clarify, Kathy, that in your presentation, you talked about when you're completing your application phase to upload a PDF file of that district grant bank statement. You no longer need to include a copy of a voided check or the deposit slip. So that requirement has gone away. Just upload the most recent bank statement for your district grant account, and that solves all of that. Let's see, I'm reading quickly here. Can we spend the money after the grant is approved, but before the club receives the money? Kathy?
Yes, you can. So, right, if we approve it on July 1, and you're anxious to get going, you can start spending money even if the check doesn't reach your bank account until July 15th or 20th or something.
Kathy, this one's regarding the project, the estimated project completion date that was, of course, included in the original application. If they put it in as April 30th, for example, the question is, can we continue to spend funds to complete the project and its dedication ceremony into May or June?
Absolutely. Yeah, you definitely can. And the key is just to have all of your grant project work done so that you can submit your final report no later than December 1st. So absolutely. You know, and I'll just add that it is actually really helpful if you're, for example, you propose to have your project done by April 1st, you're finishing your payments and you're, let's say, writing your report in May or June. That gives us a lot of time if we have your report that early, that far in advance of the deadline, to review it, get back to you if you have any questions. So we really appreciate you working on those things and not waiting right until the deadline.
Okay, Kathy, question, if the contribution to a multi-club district grant project is modest, not defined in this question, does your club still need to have it designated as your priority, your highest priority? And I would assume the answer is yes.
Yeah, it does. And I think this year that's going to be a more critical issue with a smaller amount of DDF available than we've had in the past year. And again, it really depends on the number of proposals, but yes.
Yeah, I think we just have to choose wisely and go from there. So again, I will remind everyone that the May 2022 updated district foundation manual will be available for you, and I encourage you all to go there on the district grant landing page on DACDB. So all of this detail is contained within that. Tim, did you have something you wanted to offer?
Yes, somebody asked if they're writing for other grants, can I put that in their district grants account?
Oh, he's reading ahead on the question. So again, we've mentioned a couple of times, Kathy, that it's a large grant project of which the Rotary funds are only part of it. So I'm going to make some numbers up. Let's say it's a $15,000 project, and the $5,000 that a club would have to put towards that. What gets put into that grant account? What gets commingled in that Rotary district bank account?
So we really would, we need you just to include in your district grants bank account the amount of money that you're spending on the district grants project. That again makes the tracking of the spending and the matching of income and payments much easier to track. So right, if you've got a $10,000 grant that you get from the Meyer Trust or something, we would ask you to spend that Meyer Trust grant money out of your either your operating account or some other account, and not commingle those funds with your grant funds.
Great, thank you. Let's see, I will remind everyone that today's recording, the handouts that you were able to download will all be available for you in the next 48 to 72 hours. So that'll be available on the DACDB district grant landing page for 22-23. Remember, Hal talked about changing the org year. So that's where that will be housed. I will also put just the slide deck on there as well for you. So you'll have the handouts, you have the slides, you'll have the recording, and you'll have all the references that the team has talked about today on that. Hal, are you still on the call? One of our attendees was checking the links and was having a little bit of problem. So do you want to talk about Safari versus Chrome versus Firefox?
I just double checked two of the links in Safari, and both of them work for me. So if they're having problems, just have them contact me directly and we'll work on it.
Great, thank you. And last
Chrome
question.
doesn't work. I just checked Chrome and I couldn't download the memorandum of understanding.
I'll
Okay,
double
Jerry,
check it.
thanks. I know in this area we need to be creative because I was having some issues too. So last question here is, again, if you, as we said, you're able to submit 2 district grant applications. If you're fortunate and both your high and your medium grant is approved for this 22-23 year, you can use 1 district grant account with, a proper accounting to show how the money is spent on each of those. You do not have to have 2 separate accounts. And I think I'm going to cut it off right there. Again, we're running long, and thank everyone for questions. Kathy, do you want to address this slide?
Yes, absolutely. We're a team of 4. And so you've met today, Hal Kibbe and me. Tim Quinlan from Grants Pass Rotary Club has worked with us last year and will continue this year. And we're welcoming Al Solomon from the Coos Bay North Bend Rotary Club. Al is kind of getting a handle on things, though he's a longtime Rotarian and familiar with grants. So all of us, you'll be hearing from one or more of us. The other thing I would just add is that we're working in teams of 2, and we kind of split the clubs and the grant proposals into 2 groups. So let's say you contact me with a bunch of questions, I'll try to answer. But if you're in the other team's review group, I will copy Hal Kibbe and Al Solomon and let Hal then pick up and continue to work with you. So just know that we you may hear from one or more of us on your proposals. And so Tim Quinlan and I are one team, and Hal Kibbe and Al Solomon are the other grant review team.
Kathy, I might add to that Al and I are going to take clubs starting with F, like Florence, to Z, and that you and Tim are going to have A to whatever it is.
Okay. Yes, and I would say that we are talking with each other regularly. So especially because Hal is the district stewardship chair, I am frequently consulting with him. But anyway, all 4 of us, I just want you to know, if we have any questions, we'll consult with each other. We also consult with Leanne and Tim and Cindy on questions that require a greater level of authority and detail and knowledge.
First, let me just say thanks to everybody for attending today's district grant training. I want you to know that this district grants team is rocking it, and they've worked very hard to get this training together for you. So please thank them when you get a chance. Thank you, grants team. I'm so grateful. Our goal is to give access to district dedicated funds for all our clubs by qualifying you today to write a district grant. I want you to know the next important step is for your president-elect to attend the Intro to Grants training and then sign, along with their president-elect and the treasurer, the MOU financial management plan document. So that's the next step, and that will be available through DocuSign. I want to just summarize 4 things beyond what you heard today. The key things I want you to take away. Please do relevant service. Please do engage your members. Please do manage your funds impeccably. And please do partner with your community NGOs to increase your impact. All of this and all the detail go towards making this really a successful grants management program for our district. And so I want to thank you for all that you do for Rotary, for others that are less fortunate than the rest of us.